Welcome everyone. So today let's continue with the next topic, that is the events in sexual reproduction. Already we have discussed in our last class about the introductory part of the sexual reproduction process, which includes the fusion of two types of gametes, that is the male and the female gamete. Hope the last class is clear, that's why. So now let's continue with the next part. Now, first of all, in the events in sexual reproduction, that means what are the particular things that take place during the process of fertilization, sexual reproduction. So, the first thing is the pre-fertilization events. Pre-fertilization events, these events occur before fertilization takes place. That means before the process of fusion of gametes, the events that are taking place come under the pre-fertilization process. Here the two important parts are gametogenesis and gamete transfer. Okay, now while we are talking about gametogenesis, now we are telling that sexual reproduction, so for sexual reproduction to take place, definitely two gametes have to fuse, isn't it? So before fusion, definitely the gametes are to be produced somewhere, isn't it? So the particular process of gamete formation is known as gametogenesis. Okay, so before fusion, the gametes are produced by some particular processes. Now the gametes are normally haploid cells, isn't it? So that means if suppose we are considering a male gamete and a female gamete, so these two gametes are haploid, that is with n chromosome number, and when they fuse, only then they will form a twice and diploid organism. So for formation of diploid organisms, definitely the gametes have to be haploid cells. Now these two gametes are heterogametes, that means they are not identical, they are different. Because if they are homogametes, then definitely sexual reproduction process in higher organisms will be hampered, isn't it? So these gametes are different, that's why one is male and other is female. Now sometimes what happen, these gametes may also be similar. Now normally we are telling these are heterogametes, but sometimes they may be homogametes, as for example in case of cladophora we observe. Okay, during sexual reproduction the gametes are similar, they are isogametes. Now while we are talking about the male gametes are normally called enterozoids. Okay, or these are called the sperms, while the female gametes are called egg or ovum. Okay, so these are important terms while we are studying about the process of sexual reproduction. Now already as discussed earlier, we have while sexual reproduction processes different types, we have already discussed about isogamy, isn't it, anisogamy and oogamy. Now while we are discussing about isogamy, that means here the gametes will be similar, isn't it? That means the gametes are isogametes, both the fusion gametes are similar. Anisogametes means one gamete is smaller and other gamete is larger. So here this is the male, this is the female gamete. Similarly here the male gamete is smaller and the female gamete is larger. Again in case of oogamy, the male gamete is motile, smaller, female gamete is larger and it is non-motile. Okay, so these are the different types of gametes that we observe as per the different type of sexual reproduction. So these are the different types of gametes that we observe in different type of organisms. Now the main division that takes place during the formation of these haploid cells is the meiosis process. Okay, already in class 11 we have studied about what is meiosis. This is the reduction cell division in which a particular organism undergoes cell division, reduction division takes place and the twice n chromosome set becomes haploid, n chromosome. Okay, So this particular division is very much essential for gamete formation in sexually reproducing organisms. Okay. Now the meiosis. Suppose we are telling that this is a particular cell X. This is undergoing meiosis. So if this is undergoing meiosis, that means this particular cell is called the meiocyte. Okay, this is a twiscent cell. We are naming it X. So the particular cell which undergoes meiosis is called meiocyte. Okay. Now, this is important because sometimes it is asked that suppose a zygote is given, an egg is given, sperm is given, and again a mother cell is given. So it may ask that which cell is meiocyte in zygotic meiosis. So definitely you have to go for the correct option. Okay. So that particular cell which undergoes meiosis is called the meiocyte. Now, again there are, according to the different type of meiosis that takes place, there are again of different types of meiosis. One is called the zygotic meiosis, which is observed in case of Chlamydomonas. Zygotic meiosis means the meiosis which occurs during the development of zygote. That means zygote act as the meiocyte. Then sporic meiosis, it is observed in most plant. Here the spores, the germinating spores, they undergo meiosis. Okay, so these the sporangia, they're producing haploid spores. That means they undergo meiosis and then they produce the haploid spores. So the spores are behaving as meiocytes. That's why this is the sporic meiosis. And gametic meiosis, here the germinal cells are diploid. They act as meiocyte. They undergo meiosis to form haploid gametes, which occurs in most type of animals. So these are the three different type of cell divisions which occur in different organisms. Okay, zygotic meiosis in Chlamydomonas, then sporic meiosis in case of many plants, and gametic meiosis which occurs in case of most animals. Now once the gametes are formed, definitely for fusion they have to be transferred, isn't it? Now if they are flagellate, definitely they will move with the help of flagella. But if they do not have any locomotory organ, so definitely they have to be transferred. So after gametogenesis, the next pre-fertilization event is gamete transfer. Now for fertilization, in case of lower plants, actually what happened, some media is there like water, air, for which in case of plants also, for which it will carry the gametes, okay, non-motile gametes near the motile, it will carry the motile gametes to the non-motile ones, and then fertilization will take place. And in case of higher animals, normally what happen, some in case of unisexual animals, basically like we human beings, here copulatory organs are present for the transfer of gametes. Okay, in flowers pollination take place. In lower plants, normally a medium like water is there for transfer of gametes. And in unisexual animals, normally copulatory organs are there which will help in the process of gamete transfer. Okay, that means the motile gametes will move to the non-motile gametes as they cannot go. So this is the total pre-fertilization events. Now once pre-fertilization, gamete formation and gamete transfer take place, so definitely the next process will be fertilization. Okay, now as already discussed, fertilization means the fusion of male and female gametes, isn't it? So both the gametes, haploid gametes, will fuse together to give a diploid zygote. Now this fertilization may again be of two types. One is called the external fertilization and other is called the internal fertilization. External fertilization means the process in which the fertilization takes place outside the body of the organism. That means the gametes are released in the aquatic medium and then here fertilization, fusion takes place. As for example, in case of frog, fish, then algae. Okay, and internal fertilization means this process takes place within the body of the organism, that is within the body of the, in case of higher organisms, the female organism. Okay, so when it is taking place outside, It is external fertilization. When it is taking place inside the body of an organism, then it is called internal fertilization. Now, after fertilization, again the zygote form has to undergo some changes, modification. Those come under the post fertilization events. So under post fertilization, first is the zygote. That means the diploid cell that is formed due to fusion of male and female gamete. Now this zygote will undergo development, okay, as per the environmental conditions, and they will develop into an embryo. Now in case of algae and fungi, the zygote develops a thick wall and give rise to the zygospore, which will germinate, and ultimately it will produce haploid individuals, okay, for producing the new individuals. Then in most animals, the zygote divides mitotically and it forms diploid embryo. And in plants also, the zygote first forms embryo and then the diploid sporophyte, and ultimately they leads to the formation of new individuals, okay. So the zygote development takes place and ultimately it forms the embryo. So the next process is embryogenesis. This means the process of formation of embryo from a diploid zygote, okay. Now when the embryogenesis process takes place, that means here the cells will divide and then ultimately it will lead to the formation of new individuals. Gradually morphogenesis will take place, accompanied the cell division, okay, and finally organisms are developed. Now based upon the site of development of embryo, that means how the embryo is and from where it is developing, again the organisms may be divided into oviparous, viviparous and ovoviviparous. Oviparous means those animals which lay eggs, okay, like birds, etc. Viviparous means the organisms which give birth to their young ones, like human beings. And ovoviviparous means it is the phenomenon of female retaining the egg after fertilization and allowing the development of the embryo inside the body, but without providing any nourishment from the placenta. That means after fertilization, the embryo will remain within the body and it will develop there, but there is no any placenta and nourishment, okay, as for example shark. So these are the different type of organisms based on the mode of development of the embryo. Then in case of flowers, normally the embryo develops, okay, the fertilized ovule, it matures and converts into seed, the ovary from the fruit, okay. So thus the embryo will ultimately germinate to give rise to a new plant. So these are the changes that takes place in case of plants. So the pre-fertilization, fertilization and post-fertilization, they together constitute the events in sexual reproduction, okay. So while we are discussing these events, all these are very important to explain. Gametogenesis, process of gamete formation. Once the gametes are formed, they are transferred. When transferred to proper site, definitely fertilization will take place, which may be either external or internal. And when fertilization takes place, then the development of zygote and finally the embryo. And when embryo develops, ultimately it will lead to the development of the organism. Okay, after discussing about the sexual process, asexual and vegetative process, sometimes in case of some organisms, what happened, individuals develop without being fertilized, okay. That means development of an egg into a complete individual without fertilization, okay. That process is known as parthenogenesis. Now this process was first studied by Charles Bonnet in the year 1745, okay. He observed this in case of animals. Now the parthenogenesis may be natural or it may be artificial. Now in case of natural parthenogenesis, it regularly occurs in certain animals, okay, and this can be divided into complete parthenogenesis, incomplete parthenogenesis, and paidogenetic parthenogenesis. Now, complete parthenogenesis means incomplete parthenogenesis, which is also known as obligatory parthenogenesis. It occurs in animals which breed only by parthenogenesis. That means there is no any other means of reproduction. Okay, complete sexual reproduction is absent and only parthenogenesis is the means for reproduction. For example, small snakes. Okay, so they reproduce only by obligate or complete parthenogenesis. Then in case of incomplete parthenogenesis, which is also known as cyclic parthenogenesis, it occurs in organisms where both the sexual and parthenogenesis process may take place. Okay, so for example, like aphids, wasp, okay, these are the examples of incomplete parthenogenesis. Yes, simultaneously both the process may occur. Then paidogenetic parthenogenesis, it occurs in larvae like liver fluke. This is based on the sex of offspring. Okay, if the males are only produced by this process, then it is known as arhenotoky, which is observed in case of honeybees. If only females are produced, then it is known as thelitoky. Okay, and if both males and females are produced, then it is known as amphitoky. So how the organisms are produced? By the method of paidogenetic. Based on that, there are three types: arhenotoky, male production; thelitoky, female production; and amphitoky, both male and female production. Then next is the artificial parthenogenesis. Artificial parthenogenesis means here the egg is induced to develop into a complete individual by artificial stimulus. That means we will use some physical or chemical stimulus, like it may be temperature, pH, or alcohol, urea, etc. like this, of some artificial means, which will forcefully induce the parthenogenesis process in that particular egg. So that is known as artificial parthenogenesis. Now, if parthenogenesis is taking place, then it is a simple and easy means of reproduction. Okay, here it is also a rapid multiplication process and it helps in determination of sex. Now, when we are talking about this paidogenetic process, so definitely, while if male is produced, then we will call it arhenotokos, isn't it? So like that, it helps in determination of sex. But the main disadvantage of this process is that it eliminates the variation. Okay, and so it do not play any role in organic evolution. If it is eliminating variation, that means definitely it will affect the process of evolution, isn't it? So these are the different types of parthenogenesis and the advantages and disadvantages of parthenogenesis. So this is all about the whole chapter. So already we have discussed everything. Like first we have discussed about the asexual reproduction, then vegetative reproduction, sexual reproduction, the events of sexual reproduction, and now the parthenogenesis, that is which is a completely different process. That means here fertilization is not at all involved. Directly the gametes are formed, egg is formed, and that particular egg is directly developing into a new individual. Okay, that is the parthenogenesis process. So go through the books, the notes that are provided. If there is any problem, let me know. And as we have completed this chapter, so it is important for you to go through the questions also, objective part also, and if you have any problem, then let me know.